Satan gets busy, but you gotta know when he's working so you can let God handle up on your behalf. This Facebook post sounds innocent enough, right? Maybe even inspiring.
She look like she did she look like she did some shit, boy. She straight out the gutter, out the slums, boy. She about that action. Yeah, she tore the gun everywhere she go. I can tell. I already know her type.
But here's the
this might even be in New Orleans. She look like a New Orleans bitch for real.
The woman who wrote these words had just murdered her boyfriend.
Damn.
And left his body to rot in their shared apartment.
Damn.
While 37-year-old Vianita Lennon was posting about God and Satan on social media, Jason Bloomfield's corpse was decomposing just feet away from where she slept.
Damn,
For 6 days, she carried on like
slipping.
nothing happened. She went to work, she talked to neighbors, she even drove around in her dead boyfriend's car. But when Jason's 15-year-old son walked into that apartment, he discovered a horror that haunted him.
Damn, don't tell me the son found him?
Vianita put on the performance of her life, fake tears and all. Can you imagine? Drop a comment if you've ever had a gut feeling about someone that turned out to be right, because this case will make you question everyone around you. Living with Parker about recognizing these red flags. If you want to help others, subscribe. Field was just an ordinary guy living an ordinary life in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. At 46 years old, he wasn't asking for much from life. He had his job at Burger King, where he showed up every day without fail.
That ain't no damn
His
Burger
coworkers
King.
could count on him. His manager knew he'd be there when scheduled. Jason loved the Miami Dolphins with a passion that only true fans understand. Win or lose, he supported his team. It was one of those simple pleasures that made him smile.
Why the hell is y'all
even
talking
when
about the teams he like?
money was tight and they were facing eviction, but nothing that seemed worth killing over. November 23rd, 2024 started like any other day for Jason. He had no idea it would be his last.
Nobody ever
He
do.
couldn't have known that the woman he trusted, the woman he shared a bed with, was about to end his life in the most brutal way possible. That evening, around dinner time, neighbors in their apartment complex heard something that would haunt them forever. 6 gunshots rang out from Jason and Vianita's unit. 6 loud bangs that shattered the quiet of a regular Thursday night. Those neighbors had no idea they had just heard Jason Bloomfield's final moments. And they definitely didn't know that his heard Jason.
Now, there's no disrespect, but I wonder, like, do they be trying to cover up the bumps with the makeup, or does the makeup cause these little small bumps that you see under the makeup? I'm just asking. That's just something I want to know. Y'all let me know in the comments.
Bloomfield's final moments. And they definitely didn't know that his killer was already planning her next move. The next morning, November 24th, something unprecedented happened.
I can't date hood
Jason
chicks like that.
Bloomfield didn't
They
show
just
up for
too
work.
gangster.
His manager at Burger King
Not that I
stared
can't
at the
handle them. I
schedule.
just that shit ain't attractive to me. I don't like
Then
it.
at the clock, Jason was supposed to be there. He was always there. In all the time he'd worked at the restaurant, Jason had never been a no-show. He was
Sound
reliable,
like me.
the kind of employee managers dream about. If Jason couldn't make it to work, he called. He gave notice. He was responsible.
Boy, I liked
But
this
not
job.
today. Today,
He liked
there
this
was
job, real
just
talk.
silence. The manager tried calling Jason's phone. It went straight to voicemail. He tried again an hour later. Still nothing. By the end of Jason's shift, concern was turning into worry. This wasn't like Jason at all. Meanwhile, Jason's family was starting to panic. His mother tried reaching him throughout the day. Enough. She made it sound like Jason had simply walked out of her life. The apartment that Jason and Vianita shared became eerily quiet. Neighbors who were used to hearing the sounds of daily life, TV shows, conversations, footsteps, now heard nothing. It was as if the place had become a tomb. Days passed. Jason's absence at work continued. His family's calls went unanswered. His friends started asking questions. But Vianita kept up her act, telling
Vianita.
different stories.
Let me hear that again.
And started asking questions. But Vianita kept up her act,
Vianita.
telling different stories to different people, always with an explanation for why Jason wasn't around. What none of them knew was that Jason was still in that apartment.
That's crazy.
He'd never left.
The
He
smell
couldn't
should be
leave.
crazy in that house.
And with each passing day, the evidence of what Vianita had done was getting
Vianita,
harder
that's gonna
and
kill me
harder
every
to
time I
hide.
hear it.
Vianita Leon wasn't just some random girlfriend
Leon.
who snapped one day. She had a history that should have been a warning sign to everyone around her.
She looked
Vianita
like it.
was born in Detroit, Michigan, but had moved to Florida years earlier. She'd lived in both Miami-Dade and Broward counties, bouncing around like someone always running from something. At just 4 feet 11 inches tall, she might have looked harmless to most people. But looks can be deadly deceiving. What really set off alarm bells was her criminal
You
record.
could tell by how you see how that lip go up when you
Vianita was
talk.
a convicted felon with a past that included multiple run-ins with the law. She wasn't some first-time offender who made a mistake. They were facing eviction from their Fort Lauderdale apartment. The stress of losing their home was crushing both of them, but it seemed to hit Vianita especially hard. When people are desperate about money, they sometimes do desperate things. Their relationship was falling apart too. According to what Vianita later told people, Jason was cheating on her with his ex-girlfriend. She described this other woman as problematic and claimed that's why she and Jason had broken up. But here's
But
the
y'all was
thing.
still living together?
Investigators would later discover that this story about cheating was just another one of Vianita's lies. The truth was that Jason and Vianita were still living together
That's what
when
I
he
thought.
died. They hadn't broken up. They were just two people under incredible pressure, trying to figure out how to keep a roof over their heads. But while Jason was probably thinking about picking up extra shifts at Burger King or finding a cheaper
This nigga
place to
worked at
live,
Burger King.
Vianita's
When
mind
they
was
said
going
he
to
never
much
called
dark.
off and whooped the woo, I forgot they said he worked at Burger King. This nigga was a loyal employee to Burger King. God damn it.
Her places. Her criminal past had taught her that rules didn't apply to her. Her Facebook posts about Satan getting busy weren't just random thoughts. They were the mindset of someone who was already planning something evil. The combination was toxic. A career criminal facing eviction, living with a man she claimed was betraying her, all while pretending to be a woman of faith on social media. These
Feel like
weren't
she
just
gained
red
some weight in that
flags.
last picture.
They were warning sirens that nobody heard in time, and Jason Bloomfield was about to pay the ultimate price for missing those signs. November 29th, 2024. 5 days had passed since those gunshots echoed through the apartment complex.
Damn, 5 days and it went
5
by?
days of silence. 5 days of unanswered calls and growing panic from Jason's family.
And
His
nobody noticed
15-year-old
nothing.
son couldn't take it anymore. Neither could Jason's mother. They'd been calling, texting, and worrying themselves sick.
She thought
Jason
it
would
was just
never
gonna
just
disappear?
disappear like this. Something was terribly wrong, and they knew it, so they decided to go to the apartment and check on him themselves. Picture this moment. A teenage boy and his grandmother, walking up to an apartment door, probably arguing about who should knock first. They were worried, maybe even scared, but they had no idea they were about to walk into a nightmare that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. They knocked. No answer. They called out Jason's name. Still nothing. Finally, they used their key to get inside. The smell hit them first.
Nah, I would
Anyone who's
imagine.
ever encountered death knows that smell. It's something you never forget. Sweet, sickening, and absolutely
How she slept in
unmistakable.
a bed with
But
this
they
nigga for
probably
5
didn't
days?
recognize it right away. Maybe they thought something had gone bad in the fridge, or there was a plumbing problem. Then they found him. Jason Bloomfield's body was in a small bedroom,
Man, she ain't
already
even
in what
try to
police
hide it.
reports would later describe as advanced stages of decomposition. For 5 days, in Florida's heat and humidity, his body had been rotting away, while his killer went about her daily life. Imagine being that 15-year-old boy.
They had
Imagine
no
walking
AC in
into
the
a
house?
room and finding your father's
The fuck?
corpse, bloated and decaying. Imagine the scream that probably tore from his throat. Imagine his grandmother trying to shield him from the sight while fumbling for her phone to call 911. The 911 call that came in that day was probably one of the most heartbreaking dispatchers had ever received. A family member finding their loved one dead is tragic enough, but finding them like this, after days of decomposition, after wondering where they were and why they weren't answering their phone, It's the kind of trauma that changes people forever. Within minutes, police cars and ambulances were racing toward the
That's why
Fort
they say check
Lauderdale
on your
apartment.
people.
Crime scene investigators were called in. The medical examiner was notified. What had started as a missing person case was now officially a homicide investigation. But here's what makes this story even more chilling. While Jason's son and mother were discovering his body and calling for help, Vianita Lennon was out there somewhere, probably thinking she'd gotten away with murder. What's
I
the
thought
most
she was at
shocking
home.
true
She
crime
wasn't
case
home.
from your area? Let us know in the comments, because this story is about to get even more twisted. Just as police were securing the crime scene and trying to process what they were seeing, something incredible happened.
What?
Vianita Lennon showed up. She pulled into the apartment complex parking lot driving Jason's silver BMW. Think about that for a second. She was driving her dead boyfriend's car to the scene where his body had just been discovered.
She hurt.
The audacity was breathtaking. But what happened next was even more shocking. As soon as Vianita saw the police cars and ambulances, she immediately started crying. Wailing, actually. Making a huge scene about how devastated she was to learn about Jason's death. There was just one problem. The police officer who watched her performance wrote something very specific in his report. He said Vianita was fake crying with no tears. She was making all the sounds of someone who is heartbroken, but her eyes were completely dry. This wasn't grief, this was acting, and it was terrible acting at that. The officer's trained eye caught what family members might have missed in their own shock and pain. Vianita was putting on a show, and she wasn't very good at it. Real grief doesn't look like a performance. Real tears don't turn on and off like a faucet. While Vianita was busy with her fake crying routine, detectives were already starting to piece together what had really happened. They talked to the neighbors who'd heard those 6 gunshots on November 23rd. They spoke with Jason's manager at Burger King, who confirmed he'd never shown up for work after that date. Most importantly, they started looking at Vianita's stories, and those stories were falling apart faster than she could tell them. Remember how she'd told neighbors that a friend had fired those gunshots nearby? Well, detectives checked. No reports of gunshots in the area that night, except from this apartment complex. No police calls about random shooting incidents. Her story was complete fiction. Then there was the story she'd told Jason's family about them breaking up because he was cheating. But if they'd broken up, why was she still living in the apartment? Why was she driving his car? Why hadn't anyone else heard about this breakup? The detectives weren't buying any of it. They'd seen enough crime scenes to know when someone was lying, and Vianita's lies were so obvious they were almost insulting. As they processed the scene, more evidence started piling up. The body had been moved. Jason hadn't died in that small bedroom where they found him. There were signs that someone had tried to clean up blood. A couch had been moved to block the bedroom door. This was calculated. Someone had killed Jason, moved his body, tried to clean up the evidence, and then went on with their life for 5 days while his corpse rotted away, and that someone was standing right in front of them, fake crying without a single real tear. As detectives dug deeper into the case,
that's exactly what it looked like.
Started opened up like a cheap sweater. Every story she'd told, every excuse she'd made, every tear she'd faked, it was all about to come crashing down. The first breakthrough came from technology. In today's world, your phone tells a story whether you want it to or not. Detectives pulled Vianita's cell phone records and GPS data, and what they found was damning. Her phone showed she'd been at the apartment on November 23rd when those gunshots were fired. Not nearby, not visiting a friend. She was right there when Jason died.
Forgetting about the phone.
The GPS coordinates placed her exactly where the murder happened, at exactly the time it happened. But that wasn't even the most shocking part. Detectives discovered that after Jason was dead, Vianita had been using his phone. She'd accessed his bank account and made Zelle transfers.
Damn.
Think about how cold that is. Your boyfriend is lying dead in the next room, and you're stealing his money. This wasn't some desperate woman grabbing cash to run away. The transfers happened over several days. She was methodically draining Jason's accounts while his body decomposed, just feet away from where she slept. The crime scene reconstruction painted an even more horrifying picture. Jason hadn't died in that small bedroom where his family found him. The blood evidence showed he'd been shot in the living room, probably while he was just sitting there, maybe watching TV or eating dinner. 6 gunshots. That's not someone who panicked
Did
and
all
fired
6 hit him?
once. That's not self-defense. That's execution. Vianita had emptied her gun into Jason, making sure he was dead. But then came the part that showed just how calculated this murder really was. After shooting Jason 6 times in the living room, Vianita had dragged his body into the small bedroom. A 4-foot, 11-inch woman dragging a grown man's dead weight across an apartment floor. Can you imagine that scene? The blood trail, the effort it took, the complete lack of emotion required to grab your boyfriend's corpse and drag it like a piece of furniture. Detectives found evidence of all of this. Blood spatter in the living room, drag marks across the floor, signs that someone had tried to clean up the mess but hadn't done a very good job. The cell phone evidence also revealed something else that made investigators' blood run cold. While Jason's family was frantically calling and texting him, worried sick about where he was, Vianita was
That
reading
boy
those
looked
messages.
just like his mama.
She was watching his mother panic. She was seeing his son's desperate texts, asking where his dad was, and she did nothing. She let them suffer for 5 days, knowing exactly where Jason was and exactly what had happened to him. The GPS data showed Vianita had left the apartment multiple times during those 5 days. She'd gone to work, she'd run errands, she'd driven around in Jason's
That's one
car.
of them people when the detectives be like, we want to know, was it a mistake or you just a cold-hearted person? Like, that's a cold-hearted person right there.
Like nothing had
She
happened,
cold-hearted,
all
boy.
while his body was rotting in their shared bedroom. But perhaps the most
Cold-blooded
chilling
murder.
piece
She
of
don't give
evidence
two fucks.
was what she'd posted on Facebook during this time. Remember that post about Satan getting busy? She'd written that while Jason's corpse was decomposing in the next room. She was posting about God and Satan and letting divine justice handle things.
Crazy, huh?
All while she was literally living with the evidence of her own evil. Every lie she'd told was falling apart. Every story was being exposed as fiction. The evidence was overwhelming, and it all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. Vianita Lennon had murdered Jason Bloomfield in cold blood, then spent 5 days living with his corpse while stealing his money and lying to everyone who cared about him. But Vianita's crimes didn't end with pulling the trigger. What she did after the murder shows a level of calculation that's truly disturbing. After dragging Jason's body into the small bedroom, Vianita went to work trying to erase the evidence of what she'd done. She grabbed Clorox bleach, rags, and a mop and started scrubbing away Jason's blood. Picture this scene. A woman on her hands and knees mopping up her boyfriend's blood like it was spilled coffee. The smell of bleach mixing with the smell of death. The methodical way she cleaned, trying to make sure no trace of the murder remained. But cleaning up blood isn't as easy as it looks in the movies. Blood
Right, I
seeps
bet.
into cracks, soaks into wood, leaves traces that forensic investigators can find even when you think you've cleaned everything. Vianita learned this the hard way. After she finished cleaning, she moved a couch to block the bedroom door where Jason's body was hidden. This wasn't panic, this was planning. She was creating a barrier so that if anyone came to the apartment, they wouldn't accidentally discover what she'd done. But Vianita had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated how much Jason's family loved him. She'd counted on them giving up, accepting her lies, and moving on with their lives. She was wrong,
They just
and
gonna
that
forget
mistake
about the man.
was about to cost her everything. The investigation took months, but detectives were building an airtight case against Vianita Lennon. Every piece of evidence pointed to her. Every lie had been exposed. Every attempt to cover up her crime had failed. It was on May 2nd, 2025 that justice finally caught up with Vianita. A patrol officer in Fort Lauderdale recognized her from the arrest warrant and took her into custody. After months of thinking she'd gotten away with murder, her freedom was over. But the legal system wasn't done with her yet. When prosecutors looked at Vianita's criminal history, They saw a pattern that went way beyond this single murder.
It
On
shouldn't
May
even
5th,
matter. She should
they
have
filed
life
what's
on life
called
just
a
for the
career
murder.
criminal felony case against her. This wasn't just about Jason's murder anymore. This was about a woman who had made crime her way of life, and the justice system was finally ready to hold her accountable for everything. The charges were serious: murder with a firearm and using a deceased person's personal information for fraud. That second
Crazy.
charge came from her stealing Jason's money after she killed him, adding insult to the ultimate injury. On May 28th, Vianita stood before a judge for her arraignment. This was her chance to admit what she'd done, to show some remorse for destroying Jason's
I guess
family
she ain't
and
wanna talk
ending
through
an
this whole
innocent
process.
man's life. Instead, she pleaded not guilty to all charges, even with overwhelming evidence against her, even with her lies completely exposed. Vianita was still trying to manipulate the system. She was still pretending to be the victim instead of the killer. The judge wasn't buying it. Bond was denied, meaning Vianita would stay locked up at the Paul Rhine detention facility in Pompano Beach while she waited for trial. As of now, she's still there, still claiming innocence, still refusing to take responsibility for the cold-blooded murder of Jason Bloomfield. But the evidence speaks louder than her lies
I wanted
ever
to see the
could.
interrogation
Vianita's
tape,
past
man.
should have been another major warning sign. She wasn't just someone who'd made a mistake years ago. She was a career criminal with a pattern of breaking the law. People don't usually go from petty crime straight to murder, but they do escalate when they feel cornered. The neighbors who heard those 6 gunshots should have called 911 immediately.
They should have.
Instead, they probably thought it was fireworks or a car backfiring. In today's world, we can't afford to ignore sounds like that. When you hear what might be gunshots, especially multiple shots, call the police. Let them decide if it's worth it at Burger King and spending time with his son. Instead,
I guess
he's
that's a
gone
wrap for that.
because the woman he trusted.
It's another one that I wish was better, but it is what it is. Y'all like, comment, subscribe.
Don't do it for the bar, just do it for the bar, just do it for the bar.